Okay, folks, looks like we're live. Hello out there in YouTube worlds. This is Dr. Rich Shivener. Hope you're all doing well. And we are back with the live stream, doing our thing here out in the YouTube world. So, Happy New Year, by the way. And again, I'm Dr. Rich Shivener. We are once again hosting this live stream, Get WRIT live. Excuse me, I'm got to warm up my my sort of branding there for this on YouTube. We'll be doing this for the entire winter term, and really, I loved doing this last year. It was so much fun just talking through a range of stream ideas and so forth for you, with you. And I think we had a good community, and I've noticed that a lot of people have been watching it afterwards too. So if you're joining this after the stream as well, welcome, and feel free to ride along with me as we go. All right. So today's stream, we're going to focus on our writing goals for 2022. What are some things that you want to accomplish with your writing? What are some small and large goals that you want to set or have already set for yourself? And what tasks, resources might you help you accomplish those goals? We're going to look at sort of goal setting tools and strategies, and then spend some time writing together for 15 to 20 minutes. In the show notes, actually, and the stream notes, I have links and so forth that you can check out at any point. Just making sure we're all good. We're all live. Yep, looks like we're in there. Awesome. So what are the resources that are linked and so forth? If you're curious about those, those are in the show description, so feel free to check those out as well. I always try to link as much as I can as the description will let me, so that you can see what sources are available after the stream. But before we begin the main topic, I want to discuss a few items, just some preamble that you can sort of think about before we begin. First, I want to thank once again the Writing Center Director, John Suffren, and the Writing Department for supporting another term of Get WRIT Live. Like I said, I really enjoyed doing these live streams for most of the fall term. We had good special guests. We had a lot of good comments along the way. So thanks for all that support from the viewers and from the Writing Department and our Writing Center Director, making it possible and helping promote it. Also, I'd like to thank the LAPS social media team for helping circulate on Twitter these live streams. And again, these are all public. If you'd like to share them with anyone, if they're useful to anyone you know, feel free to forward them and send them our way. And also, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that yet. It's a great way for keeping up in touch with what we're doing. If you'd like to see any of our past live streams, they are available here on our YouTube page. So you can see right now, this is actually live. And as I look at myself, it's even stranger. So, and I'm just hearing a kind of echo as I go. But if you look at it, you can see what the list is. We have it there on the page. It's also linked on our Writing Center's page. So our Writing Center Director recently updated everything we have on the live streams. It also has a list of our upcoming live streams, and I've already outlined those through April. Now, these are tentative. Things might change. Who knows? We want to be attuned to sort of timely situations and demands that surface with writing. But for the most part, I think they're pretty much set. So a couple that I'm excited to tell you about. Next week, we're going to talk about visualizing writing workflows. How would you visualize the way you process and work through writing experiences? What do those look like? We'll look at mind mapping tools and some other resources. Then we're going to talk about minimalist writing platforms. So last term we talked about writing tools, that are beyond sort of Docs and Microsoft Word. What are some kind of minimalist platforms that you're interested in that may help you focus? So this is kind of about distraction-free writing tools. We've talked about, even in the past streams, tools that motivate you to write. So you saw me work through and thus fail working through timed writing situations that actually delete your writing as you go. But what are ones that are maybe a bit more distraction free? We may come back to some of those resources we discussed, but ones that are kind of, meant to be very minimal in terms of tools you can use and features you can use in the actual platform. So we'll talk about those. We'll talk about writing for accessibility. So as an editor for journal Kairos, Rhetoric, Technology, and Pedagogy, I have had a lot of experience working with accessibility, especially for digital writing platforms. So we'll talk about some of those tools and resources that can be useful if you're thinking about, writing captions for photos, working with transcripts and so forth, and then testing web pages for accessibility. We didn't look at this last term, but I think this is really important to start thinking about, and it should drive really all kinds of writing situations, especially now, but reviewing anti-racist publishing practices and editorial guidelines. So my fields, writing studies and technical communication, all the allied fields that are under the larger umbrella of writing studies, have established a really substantial set of anti-racist publishing practices and editorial guidelines. So we'll work through those, talk about what those might mean, and maybe even do some auditing of my own work to see, how can I be more accountable for those publishing practices. In March, we'll look at the value of slow writing, and then we'll talk about writing with emotions, blocks and problems, working with Markdown. So we'll come back to web platforms. We'll talk about a specific platform called Markdown. Open workshop on your own projects, and then writing games and games for writing. Now, along the way, you can expect to have a number of guests joining me to discuss one or more of these topics. I loved having guests last term. We had authors, we had students from some of our journals in the department, and we had fellow faculty coming on to talk about topics at hand. So stay tuned for more guest spots throughout the term. And if you know anybody who would be good for this stream, feel free to suggest them as well. And then finally, while you're on the Writing Center, remember that you can always sign up for one-on-one sessions with our faculty in order to get feedback on writing assignments. So whether you're just brainstorming or putting the final touches on an essay, there are live appointments that are available. Most of these are actually virtual at this point. There are also online paper submissions you can submit to get feedback within 24 hours. Once we return to campus, might be a bit different. In-person appointments will later open up, but for the most part, we are totally online, meeting through our platform that's available through the Writing Center. So we also have drop-in sessions, and then sort of accessibility specialists and multilingual writing studios. I mean, so many resources, folks, that you can engage with for free. So check those out on our Writing Center page. All right, so let's talk about the topic for the day, writing goals for 2022. Again, what are your writing goals for 2022? And what are some things short, long term that you want to accomplish in the next year? Maybe you've been thinking about, maybe there was a goal that you didn't meet in the last year, that novel you wanted to work on, or that critical essay you wanted to submit or finish up. Maybe you didn't quite meet that mark. Maybe you learned some things about your own writing processes that you want to fix, you want to keep refining and so forth. What are they? I'd love to know what your thinking is about that. And so what we'll do as we start thinking about that, feel free to chime in along the way. We're going to look at this recently published piece on the Masterclass pages. If you don't know what Masterclass is, it is kind of this, I would say, extracurricular resource which brings in a number of sort of well-known authors across, and sort of public figures and celebrities across a range of topics. But one of the big ones is about writing. So what are some things that, you have seen on this webpage. I've seen a lot of ads for it and so forth, but what I'm mainly looking for is the kind of tips they have for free, right? I've never used this. I'm not sponsored by anyway but Masterclass, but it seems really exciting. And it's, just generally an awesome resource for writers across creative genres. This list they have on the page, it's pretty straightforward and should apply to the work we do in and outside of academic settings. And I see James saying hello. Hello, James. Hope you're doing well. And so what they have on this page, it's a really quick link, and it's yet another list that we see, but I think it's pretty substantial and credible, and I think we should talk a little bit about it. And as I walk through these ideas, feel free to chime in as we go. Okay, so they have a bit of a preamble, but here are the tips that they offer, and I think this is a good kind of script we can annotate as we go. Creating realistic goals. So as they say, if your goals are unrealistic, they'll be unachievable and overwhelming. Let's say you have a full-time job and you're trying to write 10,000 words a day. You're going to be disappointed pretty quickly. I'm going to admit something to you. Actually, I find writing goals incredibly difficult to accomplish. For me, they can't be too rigid or too large. They have to be flexible, or else I just end up disappointing myself. So when I was working, on my dissertation a number of years ago, I wanted to do, 500 to 1,000 words a day. I wanted to write all day for several days a week just to finish the thing. And that quickly became an unachievable and unrealistic goal because I had lots of different things going on. I was teaching at the same time. I was working a part-time job. I was parenting, all while, trying to find another job and to write this massive project that was a dissertation. So I started setting very small goals for writing. When I was working on my dissertation later on, for example, while taking care of my then newborn son, I changed my writing goals to about 150 words a day. So 150 words, that's really small. It's like a paragraph. You think about it, like not even a full page of material. But I also tried to make sure I worked on it 6 days a week, mainly because I was dividing my time between teaching, writing, and parenting, as I mentioned. And it worked. I'll talk more about how I measured that in a second. But for me, it was just the point of having these very small goals and then saying, I can meet that. That's small. I think at one point I even scaled to 700 or 75 goals, 75 words. And, it seems like that you could do that within 10 minutes. And sometimes that was possible. But other times, it might take me a while just to work through a couple sentences to fix something that I've been asked to revise, right? And so, I've crossed that threshold. And what I noticed was that I continued surpassing that goal very quickly. And it was just this kind of little, bit of motivation that I got, this little alert in my brain that said, you can meet that small word count. And then what can you do beyond that? But if you start too high, let's say an unrealistic number, 1,000 words, which for some people may be very difficult to accomplish in one day, and you never meet it, you're just going to keep disappointing yourself. So if you start small, almost think of it like stretch goals you'll see on Kickstarter or other fundraising campaigns. What are some things, what's small enough for you, not to the point where it seems like a joke, but it's achievable, right? And then you can just keep raising that bar later on. And what do I want to say here? That I also like the point they're making that writing goals are often quite ambitious and deflating when not met. So this is just to say that writing an essay from scratch in a week probably isn't realistic for a lot of us, unless you've cleared out everything and you're just locking yourself in that closet or in that room and saying, leave me alone, I'm going to work on this. And that can be kind of stressful doing that, right? But goals such as work on my essay for 1 hour each morning for the next 2 weeks is probably much more realistic. And if you find you have more time, stretch that goal a little bit, right? Once you've met that realistic goal, what can you do next? What's the follow-up to it? And then also be flexible. So if you're saying, I want to finish one chapter a week, it's okay to scale back at that point, and try to get in front of it quickly. If you've noticed you haven't finished one chapter a week, maybe do half a chapter, maybe just do a few pages. Again, scaling back is pretty important for being realistic. The next one they mentioned is create measurable goals. So, this one's really about goals with numeric values, for example. You get that rush and motivation they're mentioning once you've achieved the goal, and it's very tangible when you can check off something like 150 words. You can see your word count as you go. Or if you have deadlines associated with them. So as they say, for example, you can make a goal of writing a certain word count every day and then check in at the end of the month. You could also plan to have a certain amount of pages by a certain day. So, this is kind of again, related to my above comment. Maybe, in terms of realistic goals, you don't have to set anything that's quantitative, but you can say, I want to write every morning. But for this one, you can sort of do like I was doing by having, a small measurable word counts that you can check off every day, or a time frame that you can set for yourself that's easy to track. So, and to measure. So if it's just 3 hours every morning, I'm going to work on this. I know for me, my best brain, or my brain, I should say, is at its best for writing tasks between the hours of 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. So I have a goal of writing for about 2 hours every day within that time frame, or 2 50-minute sessions, which is my kind of focused time, right? If I set it for 50 minutes in the morning for at least 2 sessions, and I shut off everything else except that task, like my email and so forth, or I turn my phone down, which I often do. It's set like that. Usually I can get a lot of work done at that point. And again, that's just that sort of habit goal of working for about 50 minutes can be really great. So I just had a slight glitch there. Wanted to also get a drink of water. And for measurable goals, these seem like more immediate goals to establish. You might say, my goal today is to write about 500 words, and you work until you get to that point. And really, who knows? Those words might come rushing out as soon as you sit down, and then you'll finish faster than you expected. So you said, today I'm going to commit 4 hours to writing 500 words. Maybe you finish that in an hour because some of your thinking is unlocked, or you're just, on a roll. Then you can kind of stretch it from there, or you can move on to another task. Sometimes I don't like to say I'm going to sit at my desk for 4 hours and work on nothing but writing. If I get the task done within that goal, I can kind of move on. And I think that's why it's important to be flexible as you go. All right. And so number 3, it's track your progress. And this is related to the above. They kind of build on each other, as you might be seeing. You're going to write thousands of words and possibly hundreds of pages, or even 20 pages. That might seem like a huge feat depending on where you are in your program. But don't lose track of where you've come. So if you're, you have it sort of, you're using Google Docs, for example. I love going through a manuscript and seeing how many changes have been made through my version histories. So let me see if I can actually find that right now. We might as well check it out, right? And it can't open the page. No, okay. So let's try that. Go to Docs, and I'm logged in already. Wouldn't you know it? So right now, I'm working on this manuscript for publication, and if you ever want to kind of pump yourself up a bit, you can always check out the version histories. I mean, I started going through this a little bit, and just alone seeing, I changed a number of these sort of lines. I've started moving things around. This is a way of tracking progress. I've started moving different passages around, copy pasting them, cutting different things as I go. That is probably a familiar one for a lot of you, given that our university has Google Docs baked in for students. But there are other ways of doing it. So, for example, when I was working on my dissertation, excuse me, let's see, this is the book I'm working on right now. I haven't touched it really since the end of December, but it has project targets. And this is something I may have talked about in a previous stream. But the nice thing is you can set, what your target is for each draft, and then the session that you sit down to write, it resets every day, will tell you how many words you need to produce. And it's got this nice little thing here. So let's see if I go to, I have to check what the goal was. I think I have to change it right here, actually, excuse me. So let's just say, this is probably realistic anyways. I need to go, need to get to about 51,000 words before I submit another draft. So that shows me between now and I'll change this deadline so it's a little more realistic. I just realized now you can't even see that. So let me pull that up on the screen. There we go. Okay. So it's not showing it up on there. So we may have to pull back the curtain a little bit and show you my actual whole screen. Give me 1 second. Yeah, that'll be okay. All right, so you can see here on the screen, just to back up for real quick, I was talking about Scrivener. It wasn't showing up on the screen, but now you can see it. I'm revising this. I recently got to about 41,000 words. And then I can change this in the settings to the deadline I have. So let's just say, we'll say March 1st, 2022. Or we'll just say the 19th, since we're thinking about 60 days or so. And then it resets the word count every time I open it. And it shows me that, between the 43 days that I have between the deadline, and I'm working 5 days a week on this. If I do, I need to produce about 230 words. And as I start typing, what's really cool is it shows you what you type. So say hello, and it shows me that I have 2 words up there. So now, this is important for me because every day I'm checking, I'm saying, how many do I need to meet? And what it will do for me is actually recalculate how much I have left. So if I didn't produce anything, this number is going to go up the next day. If I produced 750 words, and that includes quotations, things like that I'm bringing into this manuscript, it's going to change that. It's probably going to lower it as I go. I've gotten to a point where, just for whatever reason, I was producing a lot of material for a particular week, and it was down to about 75 words a day, or even 50 words. And that's really gratifying because as it's measuring it for you, it's showing your progress. It's showing where you are on the bar. And you're just saying, I could work a little bit more. I can work a little bit more to try to meet that goal. So that's one example. Something more practically, and I talked about this on a previous stream too, was the program Ulysses, which is, I think it's available for mobile and iOS, but this is a kind of comment thing I had, manuscript I was working on that's written in what's called Markdown. So we'll talk about that later on, but This is beyond that point. What I think is really cool is you can set goals here. So I might say that I want to do 2,000 words, right? And it'll show you on the right what that goal is. You can, pop that out. You can send it to people. You can have this as a kind of guiding point up on your screen as you're working. So this is a new test, and it shows me what that is. Tells me the number of sentences I have. I don't know if I want to produce 2,000 sentences for this one, but paragraphs, right? You can break it out in ways that seem more achievable for you. So Ulysses is a really nice program for that. And hello to Dia. Welcome back to the stream. And to everybody else who's joining us. So again, those are ways of tracking your progress. There's nothing better than when you can, than when you can see that bar moving towards completion. Although I will admit, as you start deleting things, you might feel like you're actually missing a goal. But, I know a lot of writers who talk about the value of deletion near the end stages of that. So don't get discouraged if your bar sort of fluctuates as you go. Right. And just more practically, keeping track of your word count each day, as you would do in Google Docs or on Microsoft Word and other platforms, is just a real practical way. You can put that into a spreadsheet as you go. I did have one of those at one point, but as I've kind of admitted, I'm terrible about following through on things I tried. I like to experiment, see what works for me, and I've found that I've been pretty consistent with Scrivener and Ulysses, but not some other things I've used. And it's mainly just because those two are really simple for tracking. Okay, let's come back to that. What do I have on stream now? There's me. I think we can get rid of this. Let's show that one. Okay. And I have this. Yes. Okay. So demonstrated Ulysses and Scrivener. Let's talk about accountability. That's another one here for just a little bit. The advice that I give is a good start. They talk about you need to make it a priority. Otherwise you'll find every excuse not to make these goals sort of happen, and you'll lose sight of your long-term goals. It's an opportunity to practice time management skills and finally become an author. So it's like, it's all about yourself. That's a really important thing to think about. But for me, what really matters is having accountability partners, friends and colleagues who are willing to write with you or who are also writing and are willing to look at your works in progress. So if you ask a colleague or a professor to read over your work, you're setting a deadline for yourself to share it. Right? So my friends and I, we text all the time and say, I'm working on this piece. Do you mind checking it out? I can send it to you in a few days. I've kind of established this contract with them, this expectation. And so it motivates me to be more accountable to them as I go. And if you agree to meet at a certain time online with, fellow writers, or perhaps in person, you should be holding each other accountable to meet. And so for the past few years, I've met a colleague at a coffee shop or online on Fridays, and actually met a number of colleagues through the Institute for Research on Digital Literacies. And we just have sat together online and written for a number of hours, right? Just shutting off the camera, checking in every 50 minutes, every hour or so. Those are, sort of baseline ways of holding each other accountable. Just showing up is enough sometimes to get work done. And I find that I got so used to those situations that, I looked forward to it, because I think as I sat down at the coffee shop or got online with colleagues, like some of those feelings about, good writing I was doing would return to me. And it's just, let's just also acknowledge that writing can be pretty painful for a lot of us. If we're struggling, it's nice to know that others might be feeling the same way, or if others, are sharing a really cool accomplishment, such as getting a publication or a kind of tentative acceptance to a manuscript, that could be really motivating for us too. We should be happy for them, celebrating each other, and then lifting each other up. And I think that when you're in that shared time and space, even if it's online, you're going to be pretty motivated to finish projects. And if you're not motivated, maybe your peer or your colleague can help you get motivated. And so let's talk about motivation for the final one they have here. A lot of us have reasons, as they're mentioning. Why do you love writing? What helps you get work done? Kind of keeping those motivations in mind can help you combat what we've often called writer's block. So if you're working on a range of assignments, maybe some of them aren't that motivating, they're not that inspiring. So what could you do to work through that? They reference reward systems. I have some simple ones that I use. Maybe you have others that you find to be useful, when you're working on a task. But for every 15 minutes that I write, which I set my timer with, I've talked about this on past streams, I think, I allow myself to get up, stretch, grab a snack and such. I also visit a page called Scryfall where I can, look up just for a couple minutes some new deck ideas for a card game that I play. I have this at my disposal, and I just try to give myself about 10 minutes to do whatever I want, step away from the task, and then come back to it. I also find, a lot of motivation in different writing experiments. And, one of my constant goals as a writer and a scholar is to learn or experiment with different writing tools every year. So try something new, right? It's a basic, maybe unrealistic or vague kind of goal, but it's still really interesting to me to try. And so my colleague Beth Caravel and I are actually beginning to write together in VR spaces. And I'm going to see if I can pull this up in a second, but you can see this kind of quick clip of us trying to write in a platform called Big Screen VR. And we've thought about, just seeing if what's possible in that space. Can you actually write together in that space? And what kind of thinking is unlocked? And I'm always motivated to do that because when I experiment, I have a new idea or a kind of question, research question perhaps, that I want to pursue. Right? If I don't allow myself to experiment, if I don't set that constant goal to experiment, I may not be motivated to pursue new ideas. And let's turn to the chat. So Dia is saying, when I have boring essays, I usually brainstorm with a writing instructor to get a fresh or different perspective on the topic. And so, talking out those ideas with an instructor can be really, really interesting. I've certainly had that similar situation. I've not really felt too excited about, meeting a deadline. And again, those accountability sessions you have with somebody, and that can be a writing center instructor as well. It could be really great for getting the task done. Let me see if 1 second I can just pull this up. Maybe others of you have similar thoughts. How do you motivate yourself to get work done, especially if you're on a deadline? What does that look like for you? Okay, I did find it, so it's very exciting. I'll have to turn this down a little bit so we can actually hear it. Well, not hear it. I don't really care to play the audio, to be honest. But let me just show you what that was like. Oh, don't want to shut myself off. Screen 2. Yep. Oh, I want to change that. So again, we started kind of doing this, looking at like different screens, ways of sharing our screens together. We found out we could actually sit next to each other in virtual space and mark up different documents. And then we also realized as we went that we could display them on 2 screens and then walk up and mark them up as we went. And so what we're kind of thinking is, in order to be motivated, I guess, to write a new article, we're going to experiment in VR for the next few months and see what we find. And it may be that we don't find anything, but there are 2 parts to this. One is actually spending the time together to write, and then the second is to see what happens as a result. If are kind of motivated to meet and share time and space, even if it's virtual. What do we produce, if anything? So again, it's kind of a new way of thinking about accountability, so to say. Okay. So let's look at those. We've got those on the page. All right. And so, yeah, they have a lot of other resources sort of linked here. And again, I'm not sponsored by, Masterclass, but it seems like a really, really cool resource, especially in sort of creative realms. So, yeah, I hope that's helpful. Again, the link to this list they have and tips is available on our show description, so feel free to check those out. And with that said, I've been talking for a little bit, almost about the 40 minutes or so I'm getting close to my little break time. So if you're still with me, feel free to kind of just step away for a second. I could say I've met the goal of talking about these kind of tips, and now I need that reward system. So I'm just going to kind of stand up for about 30 seconds to a minute, shut off my camera, etc., and then we'll be back to do a little bit of writing together. Okay. All right, then. I am back. Okay, so what we're going to do for our kind of remaining time, before I revisit kind of what's coming up for the next 2 weeks, is we're going to talk about setting goals and so forth in different ways. So these are suggestions that we've looked at through Masterclass. There's another link in the description on setting goals, and it links to a worksheet that you can either replicate here up on the screen if you like, as I do it, or you can sign up for this. This is affiliated with Writer's Digest, so it's a script magazine. So I mean, I can say, just having written for Writer's Digest in the past, it's a reputable source. But this is the kind of suggestions they have which are pretty similar to what we looked at above, but these are about SMART goals. So SMART goals you might establish for a writing project, regardless if it's creative, critical, etc. what do those look like? And just to run through these kind of quickly, I'll let you read this and then you can look at the worksheet if you like. But being specific, having those measurable goals, making sure that they're attainable or actionable, that they're relevant to what task you're working on or project you're working on, and that they're time bound. And so again, like these might be very similar to what we just looked at. I'm not going to talk through what's actually on the page. What I want to call your attention to is the actual worksheet that they give you if you sign up for it. So I won't ask you to do that, but feel free to if you like, and then I'll show you what it looks like. And I think just kind of writing through them can also be very cool. I mean, I signed up for it because I want to be sort of in touch with what they're discussing, things like that. And, you know, I've enjoyed writing for Writer's Digest in the past. So we'll see. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pull it up, and then I'll look for a writing timer page. Let's see if we can just find one up on there. Talk writing. Okay. We'll say 15 minutes. And it looks like it's actually started, I think. Has it? Maybe. Or is it counting? I don't know. Oh, 1 minute. Okay. Maybe I can do something like tomato timer, which is just shorter break, longer break, new settings. We'll say 15 minutes. No, it doesn't want to do it. Reset 15 minutes. Okay. That seems manageable. Okay, so maybe I'll do something like that. Now, what I probably have to do is share my screen again so that we can see. Sometimes you got to do things on the fly while you're doing this kind of stuff. Okay, there we go. Smart Goals worksheet. And, you know, as we're talking, feel free to list some of yours. I'm going to start putting them in. So the timer is about 15 minutes or so. Let's set it. I'll keep my mic on to chat while I'm working, but 15 minutes we'll work on this. And I want to, you know, this is a good opportunity for me to think about like what kind of overall goals are for this. And then ways I can sort of meet those. So as I work through it, I'll talk through some of the things that I have in my head with measuring, things like that. Okay, start that up. Okay, so being specific, list 3 to 5 specific goals. Exactly what do you want to accomplish stated in a specific manner, as specific a manner as possible. For example, don't set a broad goal of writing a screenplay. To be more specific, to outline a script complete with character descriptions. Okay, no pressure, right? We'll see what we can do here. Let's copy a couple of these in. And I'll just say 3 for now. You know, I'm always a fan of kind of rapid prototyping. You know, this is a very tentative thing you can come back to later on. You know, a kind of moment in time of some goals you had. Okay, specific goals. I want to finish. Is that the chapter I'm on? I think. Let me see. Yes. Okay. That's what I'm on. Well, you know what I could do? I'm going to go by month. You know what? So let's do this. Say March 15th. I'm always a fan of, if I'm just thinking about specific, things, I can just think about sort of deadlines. And for me, I have a couple things coming up. I've had to already sort of map out, and I can even just make it more assertive. I like to submit things and then sort of move on to the next thing, and having that just in production, or in the review process allows me to move on and not come back to it later on. Okay, so let's see. Those are kind of related, but we'll move on to the next one. So measurable. What is it? Write down what is measurable about your goals. Okay, so if we kind of try to do like a one-to-one comparison, what would that look like? So this is a very on incoming deadline to work on a section article every, say, writing day. So if I'm working on it 5 days a week, I should probably work on the lit review section or something like that, revise that. We'll say revise a digital article for a journal, because I'm working on that. So I want to revise a section, and that's small enough, right? And it's, most sections are about 1,000 to 2,000 words. Not too bad. I think that just working on one section for each session is more than enough. And maybe I can do more, right? If they're not asking for a lot. So that also means spend 1 hour on the book, 1 hour on the hour, each day. Probably more. I should, I'm thinking something like, I could just say spend Fridays working on the book. And then maybe that's too little. Spend 2 days a week working on book exclusively. We could try that. I've done that before. My schedule's a little busier right now, but I think that's something, maybe it is, yeah. Once I get past this deadline, then I can start really working on this. So I could just say spend 2 days a week. Okay, so one thing we have to do, and that we've talked about doing, is for this one, goal number 3, submitting that kind of VR manuscript. If we have that, then one thing that we have to sort of measure, I guess, is spending at least an hour at least 1 hour, we should say. So we've talked about setting up like weekly meetings or bi-weekly to get this done. And again, it's just that forming that habit of actually meeting, but simulating that in VR could be pretty useful for capturing the data we need. And then submit the entire book by August. So what's that? What does that goal look like? How do I sort of get to that point? I mean, I think it's kind of back to that one, but writing. We'll just say starting in May. From the book 5 days a week, because I won't be teaching then. I have a little bit more time. I'm looking at this, I'm like, wow, I don't even know if these are really that achievable. We'll see. But it's nice because it's iterative. You can come back and revise it as you go. All right, so if I've got those, what are the actionable things I need to do? Actionable items, be more consistent with my writing schedule. Block out an hour to write each day. So maybe these can be the kind of more actionable but yet broader habits that would be useful. When I look at my writing calendar, for example, I set aside time to work mainly Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays on work, and then I spend like Wednesdays and Thursdays kind of doing teaching and sort of live stream stuff. So one thing I can think of immediately is just what I've said before at the top of this stream is work on research and writing from approximately 9 to 1 to Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays. So that's like more specific, kind of in that line. I could say work on it 3 days a week. I'll just say, maintaining 50-minute writing sessions in those days. Share one draft of my book with colleagues at the beginning of each month. And then I'll say set up new accountability schedule, which is still kind of vague, but okay, so actionable things. Hello, Smith. Thanks for the question. And no worries. I'm glad you can make it regardless. The question was, sorry I came late to the streaming session. Are these sessions recorded and saved so we can go back to it to watch? Yes, absolutely. So these are on demand. So that right now it's live, a little bit of latency between when I'm speaking and what, you're sort of seeing, and so forth. But yeah, absolutely. These are, free, public, right here on YouTube. And I think once this ends, just come back to the same link and go to our YouTube page and it will be available. And so, yeah, what we've been doing throughout this whole session is talking about different resources and goals. And I've linked to a couple things in the description as well. You can check those out in the description and at your leisure. I think a lot of people do this too. And so you're not alone. We've got a lot of things going on, but it's nice to kind of develop it live, get some comments as we go, and then other folks come on later. So welcome if this is your first time as well. We've got lots of things from last term you can look at on our YouTube page, a number of streams, discussions with authors, and then we have much more coming up throughout the term. So good question. Thanks for asking. All right, and so they are also suggesting those realistic things. Push past your comfort zone. If you aren't realistic, you can easily feel defeated. It's coming back to some of the things we discussed earlier. But if you set goals with the bar too low, there's no motivation to push yourself. Okay, so it's kind of like on that spectrum of things that are too easy and too large, right? How do you sort of think big without disappointing yourself? It's certainly a task. I will just say, for the sake of time, that my comfort zone has been to write probably 500 words during my writing days. And I think I have this because a lot of the research I've done for the book, for example, is already completed. So it's just a matter of kind of putting everything together. And sometimes that's really easy to accomplish because I can draw in quotes and different resources during that. Let's see, other realistic goals. I would, one, it's kind of a meta goal, but like adapt my project goals each week. So again, like if I didn't meet that goal, I can try it maybe for another week, but I may need to scale it back a little bit, right? I think that, you need to make yourself flexible. Your process is flexible. And was that it on this one? I don't know. Okay, time bound. Yes, that's the last one. So when do you want to accomplish your goal? Setting a deadline can be very motivating. It could be a year-end goal or one that you want to accomplish in just a few weeks. I will just say, like, finish revising sections. We'll just say, like, at least 2 sections by end of day. Every Friday. And I mentioned one earlier, which is kind of time bound too. It's a nice way to kind of just come back to it, finish book by next August. I've really got to just reassess this to begin with. So maybe I just need to say, like, change book goals, adapt by Feb 1. Okay, so like I've got a couple there. That timer went off, so I think we're pretty good to go. But I mean, if anything, it's nice to just think through these, and maybe you've been doing it as well. What are your kind of smart goals or things that you've thought about setting for yourself throughout this? So I'm gonna keep this and maybe come back to it on future streams. So folks, that's really about all for me this week. Let me look at the resources here. Once again. Thanks so much for coming on the stream and chatting in the comments. If you have anything, if you're watching this on demand, feel free to leave some in the description below, things like that. And just a quick reminder, we'll be back next week talking about visualizing writing workflows. And then after that, we'll be talking about minimalist writing platforms. And it was a lot of fun just to put together this list. If you have ideas about each one of them, feel free to let me know. And yes, good luck with your class as well. Thanks again for tuning as well. So we'll see you next week. Other than that, you can always contact me via email. My information is available on the Writing Center webpage and through York's different resources. And for everyone, please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you on the next stream. Okay.